The Deep Space Monitoring Station hung in the void like a crystal flower. Its transparent walls pulsed with soft blue light as data streams flowed through living circuits. Commander Kira pressed her crystalline hand against the control surface and felt the familiar tingle of information flowing directly into her consciousness. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Coalition had ruled the known universe. Peace was not just a word, but a way of life. Wars belonged to ancient history books that few beings bothered to read. The great species had divided space among themselves with careful precision. The crystal beings of Vorthak controlled the inner systems with their perfect logic. The energy, creatures called Lumnis, danced through the outer rim worlds, bringing light and knowledge. The hive-minded Nexari built their vast cities on a million worlds where every thought was shared and every decision made by consensus. Conflict was handled through economic pressure and diplomatic meetings. If one species wanted what another possessed, they simply negotiated trade agreements. If disagreements arose, the Coalition Council would mediate until all parties found acceptable solutions. Violence was considered primitive and barbaric. Most Coalition members had evolved beyond such crude behavior millions of years ago. Commander Kira had been monitoring the outer rim sectors for over 2 centuries. Her job was simple: watch for new species emerging into space, record their development patterns, file reports on their technological progress. Most species followed predictable paths. They discovered fire, then metals, then electricity, then atomic power, then finally space travel. The process usually took between 50,000 and 200,000 local years, depending on environmental factors. The energy signature that appeared on her sensors that day seemed routine at first. A small yellow star system in Sector 7749 was showing signs of primitive space activity. Chemical rockets were lifting small metal capsules beyond the gravity wells of the third planet. Basic radio transmissions buzzed between the planet's surface and crude orbital stations. Simple fusion reactors powered industrial facilities scattered across several continents. Kira activated the deep scan protocols and waited while sophisticated sensors probed the distant system. The readings that came back made her pause. This species was unusual. Most developing civilizations built 1 or 2 orbital platforms and then spent centuries perfecting them before expanding further. These creatures had launched hundreds of primitive vehicles in just a few decades. Their planet surface showed signs of extensive industrial development. Massive cities covered entire continents connected by transportation networks that spanned oceans. The species designation file opened automatically. The local inhabitants called themselves humans. They had achieved basic interplanetary travel within their own star system, but had not yet developed faster than light engines. Their technology was laughably primitive by Coalition standards. Chemical, propulsion systems that barely managed to escape planetary gravity, metal shells that provided minimal protection against cosmic radiation, communication systems that transmitted simple electromagnetic signals at light speed. What caught Kira's attention was their behavior patterns. Most species expanded into space gradually and carefully. They built orbital habitats close to home and spent generations making them perfect before attempting longer journeys. Humans seemed to approach space exploration with reckless enthusiasm. They launched vessels toward distant planets in their system before they had perfected basic life support systems. They established competing facilities in orbit around their homeworld and even engaged in what appeared to be territorial disputes over orbital positions. The preliminary cultural analysis revealed something even more unusual. Unlike every other known species, the humans were not unified. Their planet's surface was divided into hundreds of separate political entities that maintained distinct identities and often conflicting interests. Some human nations cooperated on space projects, while others competed aggressively for the same orbital territories. The Coalition Xenobiology Department had never encountered a species that maintained such divisions after achieving space travel. Dr. Nalith arrived at the monitoring station 3 days later. The elderly Lumnis energy being flickered with colors that indicated deep curiosity as he reviewed Kira's findings. His glowing form shifted between blue and green as he processed the data streams directly from the station's memory banks. "These humans are fascinating," he said without using sound. His thoughts appeared directly in Kira's consciousness as warm patterns of light. They seem to approach every challenge as if they expect opposition. Look at their space vehicles. They are built like armor rather than simple transport containers. Their orbital stations include defensive systems, even though there are no other species in their local area to defend against. Kira highlighted several data points on the holographic display. Their industrial capacity is also unusual, she responded. Through the mental link all coalition species used for complex communication. Most species at this development level build carefully and efficiently. These humans seem to build everything in massive quantities as if they expect to lose large numbers of them. Dr. Naleth's form brightened with amusement. Perhaps they are simply inefficient, he suggested. Many primitive species waste resources before they learn proper conservation techniques. The Council will probably recommend standard monitoring protocols. We will check on their progress every few decades and initiate formal contact once they develop faster than light travel and unified planetary government. The official report was filed within a week. Species designation human. Home system Sol, Sector 7749. Classification primitive pre-contact civilization. Technology level chemical propulsion, early fusion power, basic electromagnetic communication. Political structure fragmented multiple competing nations. Recommended action continue passive monitoring initiate contact protocols in approximately 500 standard years when species show signs of political unification and technological advancement. The report was reviewed by the Coalition Cultural Development Committee and filed in the standard databases. The humans joined thousands of other primitive species whose progress was monitored from a distance while they slowly evolved toward coalition membership standards. Most committee members never bothered reading reports about species so far below their own technological levels. What none of them understood was that they had been observing humanity during one of the longest peaceful periods in human history. The space race they witnessed was not humans at their most competitive. It was humans barely trying. They had observed a species taking its first tentative steps into the universe while most of its energy and attention remained focused on planetary concerns. The Coalition's monitoring systems recorded human space activities with precise detail. They noted the careful trajectories of exploration vessels. They measured the energy outputs of orbital installations. They analyzed the radio transmissions between ground control centers and spacecraft. Everything they observed supported their conclusions about human technological capabilities and social development patterns. But the monitoring systems were not designed to observe military activities on planetary surfaces. Coalition species had long ago abandoned such primitive behavior, so their sensors focused on space-based technological development rather than surface-based conflict preparation. They completely missed the vast armies training on every continent. They did not notice the weapons factories producing millions of projectile weapons and explosive devices. They failed to detect the underground facilities where humans tested increasingly sophisticated methods of killing each other. The Coalition saw humans building primitive space stations and concluded they were a peaceful species learning to expand beyond their home planet. They had actually discovered a warrior species that happened to be temporarily focused on space exploration while maintaining the most sophisticated military-industrial complex any species had ever developed. But that discovery lay in the future. For now, the humans remained a minor entry in the Coalition databases. Primitive, harmless, and barely worth watching. Commander Kira returned to her normal duties monitoring dozens of other developing species throughout her assigned sector. The humans were just one more civilization slowly climbing toward eventual Coalition membership. She had no way of knowing that she had just filed the most important report in galactic history. The universe was about to change forever. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Unity, as it pushed deeper into space than any human ship had traveled before. The sleek vessel represented humanity's greatest technological achievement. Nuclear pulse engines drove the ship between the stars while advanced life support systems kept the crew of 200 humans alive in the cold vacuum of space. The mission was simple. Explore the outer regions of human space and search for signs of other intelligent life. Earth's scientists had detected strange energy patterns beyond the edge of their solar system. The pattern suggested advanced technology, but nothing like human engineering. After decades of debate, the United Earth government had finally approved humanity's first interstellar exploration mission. Hyun-woo had commanded naval vessels for 30 years before accepting leadership of the space exploration program. His weathered face showed the confidence that came from commanding ships through storms and conflicts around Earth's oceans. Space presented new challenges, but the fundamental principles of leadership remained the same. Keep your crew alive. Complete the mission. Return home safely. Lieutenant Minji worked at the communication station surrounded by banks of computers and transmission equipment. Her job was to establish contact with any alien species they might encounter. She spoke 12 human languages fluently and had spent 5 years developing theoretical frameworks for communicating with non-human intelligence. Every day she monitored radio frequencies hoping to detect signs of alien civilization. On the Seer, 47th day of their journey, Minji detected something extraordinary. Structured radio transmissions were coming from a point of light ahead of their position. The signals showed clear signs of intelligence, mathematical patterns, repeated sequences, organized data streams that could only come from advanced technology. Admiral Hyun-woo ordered the ship to reduce speed and approach cautiously. Within hours, they could see the source of the transmissions. An alien vessel hung in space ahead of them. The ship was unlike anything in human experience. Smooth curves replaced the angular designs of human engineering. The hull seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that shifted colors as they watched. Beautiful patterns of light moved across the surface like flowing water. The alien vessel was clearly more advanced than anything humans had built. It was 3 times larger than Unity and showed no signs of the massive engine systems that human ships required for interstellar travel. Energy readings suggested power generation methods, far beyond human understanding. The ship moved with grace and precision that human vessels could never match. Captain Taewon commanded the escort destroyer Seoul that traveled alongside Unity. His ship was smaller and faster with enough firepower to defend the exploration vessel, if necessary. Taewon had fought in 3 naval conflicts before joining the space program. He understood that first meetings with unknown forces could turn dangerous very quickly. Minji began transmitting basic mathematical concepts toward the alien vessel. Simple equations that any intelligent species would recognize. Prime numbers. Basic geometric relationships. The universal constant pi calculated to 50 decimal places. She transmitted the information using multiple methods: radio waves, light pulses, electromagnetic patterns. The response came within minutes. The alien ship transmitted back the same mathematical concepts but with corrections and improvements. They added advanced theorems that human mathematicians had never discovered. They sent back pi calculated to 500 decimal places with perfect accuracy. The intelligence behind the transmissions was clearly far superior to human knowledge. Over the next several hours, Minji worked to establish basic communication protocols. The aliens seemed patient and helpful. They transmitted simple language structures and basic vocabulary. They shared information about their ship and their technology. Slowly, a picture emerged of an advanced civilization that spanned thousands of star systems. The alien captain identified himself as Zephon. He belonged to a species called the Lumnus that existed as energy patterns rather than physical matter. Zephon expressed curiosity about human civilization and genuine interest in establishing peaceful relations between their species. He transmitted detailed information about something called the Galactic Coalition, a vast organization of intelligent species that maintained peace and order throughout known space. The conversation continued for hours with both sides sharing information about their cultures and technologies. Zephon explained that the coalition included thousands of different species living in harmony across millions of worlds. He described advanced technologies that could terraform planets and create artificial stars. He spoke of medical knowledge that could extend life for thousands of years, and educational systems that could download entire libraries of information directly into organic minds. Admiral Hyun-woo was fascinated by the possibilities. Contact with Advanced alien civilization could transform human society overnight. The technologies Zephon described could solve every problem humanity faced. Poverty, disease, aging, and resource scarcity could all become things of the past if humans could join this galactic coalition. But then Zephon made a request that changed everything. He explained that standard first contact protocols required integration of computational networks between species. He asked for access to human database systems so that coalition computers could perform what he called standard integration procedures. The process would allow both species to share information more efficiently and begin the formal process of introducing humanity to coalition membership. Lieutenant Minji translated Zephon's request and transmitted it to Admiral Hyunwoo. The Admiral considered the implications carefully. Sharing computer access with alien technology seemed reasonable for establishing diplomatic relations. But Captain Taewon interpreted the request differently. Taewon had spent his military career defending against cyber attacks and electronic warfare. The request for network access sounded exactly like the opening move in a sophisticated computer intrusion. Enemy forces always tried to gain access to communication systems before launching attacks. The alien request triggered every security instinct Taewon had developed during years of military service. He transmitted an urgent warning to Admiral Hyunwoo. The aliens might be attempting to infiltrate human computer systems as preparation for an attack. Even friendly intentions could be cover for intelligence-gathering operations. Human military doctrine was clear about protecting sensitive information from unknown forces, regardless of their stated intentions. Admiral Hyunwoo found himself facing an impossible decision. Refusing the alien request might destroy humanity's first chance at joining an advanced galactic civilization. But granting network access could expose human technology and strategic information to potential enemies. The stakes were enormous either way. The misunderstanding that followed happened very quickly. Zephon transmitted another request for network integration using more urgent language patterns. Minji interpreted the transmission as increasingly demanding, rather than simply clarifying. Captain Taewon saw the repeated requests as evidence of hostile intent. He ordered his weapon systems to active status as a precautionary measure. The destroyer Soul activated its targeting radars and missile guidance systems. The electromagnetic emissions from human military sensors flooded space around both vessels. To human operators, these were standard defensive precautions. To Zephon's energy-based consciousness, the sudden burst of electromagnetic radiation felt like a physical attack. Zephon transmitted what he intended as a distress signal, asking the humans to reduce their electromagnetic emissions because they were causing him pain. The automatic translation system interpreted his message as a threat to retaliate if the humans did not stand down immediately. Captain Taewon saw confirmation that the aliens had hostile intentions. He fired warning shots past the alien vessel. Projectile weapons launched from Soul's missile tubes and streaked past Zephon's ship at tremendous velocity. The weapons were not aimed to hit, but to demonstrate human military capability and warn the aliens against aggressive action. But Zephon's vessel was designed for exploration and scientific research rather than military operations. The energy patterns that formed his consciousness could not comprehend the concept of warning shots. To him, the humans had launched unprovoked attacks using primitive but effective kinetic weapons. His ship's defenses were not designed to stop solid projectiles, moving at such high speeds. 3 missile rounds struck Zephon's vessel before he could react. The living metal hull buckled and tore under impacts it was never designed to withstand. Critical systems failed, as energy patterns that had maintained the ship's structure for centuries were disrupted by the crude but effective human weapons. Zephon transmitted his final message as his ship began to break apart. He described the encounter to coalition monitoring stations throughout the sector. The humans were aggressive. They had attacked without provocation during what should have been peaceful first contact. They used primitive but deadly kinetic weapons that bypassed coalition defense systems completely. The message reached coalition command centers within hours. Species designation human was updated immediately. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council convened within hours of receiving Zephon's final transmission. Representatives from 47 major species gathered in the great crystal chamber that floated in deep space between star systems. The chamber itself was a marvel of coalition engineering. Transparent walls provided perfect views of distant galaxies, while sophisticated life support systems maintained environments suitable for dozens of different biological and energy-based life forms. High Chancellor Vexilon of the Vorthax species called the session to order. His crystalline body pulsed with urgent red patterns as he transmitted Zephon's dying message to the assembled representatives. The holographic display showed the human vessels and the moment of attack that had destroyed one of the Coalition's most respected explorers. The evidence was overwhelming. The humans had initiated hostilities during peaceful first contact procedures. They had used primitive kinetic weapons to destroy an unarmed exploration vessel. Their electromagnetic emissions had tortured Zephon before they killed him with crude projectile attacks. The species classification was updated immediately from harmless primitive civilization to aggressive rogue species requiring containment. The vote was unanimous. Every species representative agreed that the humans posed a threat to coalition, peace, and stability. The response would be swift and decisive. A containment fleet would surround human space and deliver an ultimatum: surrender unconditionally or face appropriate measures to protect the galaxy from their aggressive expansion. Admiral Thexinen of the Coalition Defense Force received his orders within the day: assemble a containment fleet of 200 vessels and establish a blockade around human space. The mission parameters were simple: prevent human expansion beyond their current territory, demand immediate surrender of all military assets. If humans refuse to comply, use minimal force necessary to disable their space capability and occupy their home system. The Admiral reviewed intelligence reports about human technology as his fleet assembled. The data was reassuring. Human vessels used primitive chemical and nuclear propulsion systems. Their weapons were simple kinetic projectiles and crude explosive devices. Their defensive systems consisted of basic metal armor that provided minimal protection against energy weapons. The entire human space navy consisted of fewer than 50 vessels scattered across their local solar system. Coalition forces had handled similar situations hundreds of times over the past 3 millennia. Primitive species occasionally developed aggressive tendencies during their early space exploration phases. Standard containment protocols usually resolve such problems within hours. Most pre-contact civilizations surrendered immediately when confronted with overwhelming technological superiority. Those few that attempted resistance were quickly subdued, with minimal casualties on both sides. The containment fleet that assembled around human space was the largest coalition military force deployed in over 5 centuries. 200 vessels representing the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Energy weapons that could vaporize entire cities. Defensive shields that could deflect nuclear explosions. Faster-than-light drives that allowed tactical repositioning, anywhere within a star system in minutes rather than hours. Admiral Thexinen established his command center on the flagship Eternal Peace and transmitted the Coalition ultimatum to Earth using the same communication frequencies that Zephon had established during first contact. The message was simple and clear. Human military forces would stand down immediately. All human space vessels would return to designated orbital positions around Earth. Human political leaders would report to Coalition representatives for processing into protective custody. The ultimatum included a demonstration of Coalition capabilities. Energy weapons fired controlled bursts that vaporized 3 unmanned asteroids in the outer regions of the human solar system. The message was unmistakable. Human technology could not resist Coalition forces. Compliance was the only option for avoiding massive casualties. President Sunhee received the alien ultimatum in the emergency situation room beneath the United Earth Government headquarters. The massive underground facility had been designed to withstand nuclear attacks and coordinate military responses to global threats. Now it faced something far beyond anything human planners had ever imagined. The president sat at the head of a long table surrounded by her most trusted advisors. Defense Minister Jiho argued for immediate negotiation with the alien forces. The technological gap was too enormous to overcome through military resistance. Humanity's only hope was diplomatic settlement that might preserve some degree of independence under alien supervision. General Wu Jin of the Army disagreed strongly with the defense minister's position. Intelligence reports from Admiral Hyunwoo's surviving crew indicated that the aliens had attacked first by attempting to infiltrate human computer systems. The destruction of Captain Zephon's vessel had been justified self-defense against hostile action. Surrendering to aggressive aliens would condemn humanity to permanent slavery. Admiral Hyunwoo attended the meeting via secure video link from the exploration vessel Unity, which was racing back toward Earth at maximum speed. His report provided the only detailed information available about alien capabilities and intentions. The alien vessel had been more advanced than any human technology, but it had been destroyed by conventional weapons when properly applied. Dr. Yuna entered the Situation Room carrying classified files that she placed carefully on the table before President Sun-hee. As head of the Emergency Defense Initiative, she had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this scenario. Not alien invasion specifically, but any existential threat that might require total mobilization of human military and industrial resources. Her presentation changed everything. The leadership thought they knew about humanity's defensive capabilities. The classified reports revealed military preparations that most government officials had never imagined. Hidden weapons factories on every continent, underground bunker networks that could shelter entire populations, advanced weapons systems disguised as civilian industrial facilities, secret space installations that appeared to be scientific research stations but were actually military outposts. Most shocking of all was the true scope of human military thinking. Every human nation maintained detailed battle plans for fighting every other human nation. Military academies taught officers to fight opponents with identical technology and identical tactical knowledge. Human weapons designers constantly developed new systems specifically to counter other human weapons. The entire species had spent thousands of years locked in an evolutionary arms race against itself. Dr. Yuna's classified assessment was terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. Humanity was not a peaceful species that happened to have some weapons. Humanity was a warrior species that happened to be temporarily focused on space exploration. Every human city contained millions of individuals trained in some form of combat. Every human factory could be converted to weapons production within weeks. Every human vehicle could be modified for military use. The aliens had observed humanity during one of the most peaceful periods in human history. They had completely missed the vast military-industrial complex that lay dormant beneath civilian space exploration activities. They were about to discover that they had not cornered a frightened primitive species. They had woken up the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. President Sun-hee studied the classified reports for several minutes before speaking. Her decision would determine whether humanity survived as a free species or disappeared into alien captivity. The weight of that choice showed clearly on her face as she looked around the table at advisors representing every aspect of human civilization. Her words were simple, but they changed everything. "The aliens want our surrender," she said quietly. "They think we are primitive and helpless. They believe their technology makes them invincible. They are about to learn what happens when you threaten a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history preparing for war." She turned to defense, Minister Jiho with instructions that activated the most comprehensive military mobilization in human history. "Contact every world government," she ordered. "Activate all emergency defense protocols, begin immediate conversion of civilian facilities to military production, and send a message to the alien fleet." The message President Sun-hee approved was brief and direct. "Humanity rejects your ultimatum. We will not surrender our freedom to alien conquest. If you want our worlds, you will have to take them by force. We look forward to the challenge." Admiral Thexanen received the human response with mixture of surprise and amusement. In 3,000 years of coalition expansion, no primitive species had ever refused surrender when faced with overwhelming technological superiority. These humans seemed to have no understanding of their hopeless position. Their defiance would make the coming conquest slightly more interesting, but the outcome was never in doubt. He transmitted new orders to his fleet commanders. "Begin preliminary attacks on human military installations. Disable their space vessels. and orbital facilities. Avoid unnecessary casualties but demonstrate coalition power clearly enough to break human resistance quickly. The first coalition attack began at dawn Earth time, when energy beams lanced down from orbit toward major human cities. Admiral Thexanen had ordered precision strikes against government buildings and military installations. The plan was simple: demonstrate overwhelming firepower, break human resistance through shock and terror, force immediate surrender before casualties mounted on either side. The energy weapons struck their targets with devastating accuracy. Government buildings in 12 major cities simply vanished in bursts of superheated plasma. Military bases across 6 continents were reduced to glass craters within minutes. Orbital defense platforms that humans had spent decades building were destroyed so quickly that most never had time to return fire. Admiral Thexanen watched the attack displays with satisfaction. Coalition forces had achieved complete tactical surprise and inflicted crippling damage on human infrastructure. Intelligence reports indicated that human military communications were in chaos. Several major world governments had lost contact with their armed forces. The human space fleet was scattered and disorganized, with most vessels too far from Earth to provide effective defense. The admiral expected immediate surrender. Every previous containment operation had ended within hours of the initial demonstration. Primitive species simply could not comprehend the technological gap they faced when confronted with coalition military power. Most surrendered before significant casualties occurred on either side, but the human response was unlike anything in coalition experience. Instead of surrender messages, the aliens received transmission after transmission of what could only be described as combat music. Human military bands played stirring compositions while commanders broadcast defiant speeches to their scattered forces. Most shocking of all was the speed at which human military units adapted to the new threat. Captain Minho commanded the experimental stealth destroyer Sol's Fury when the coalition attacks began. His vessel had been conducting deep space trials of new radar-absorbing hull materials when emergency orders arrived from Earth Defense Command. Return immediately and engage alien forces using any means necessary. Victory was not expected, but human military doctrine demanded that every attack be answered with counterattack, regardless of odds. Sol's Fury was humanity's most advanced military vessel, but it was still primitive by coalition standards. Chemical rocket engines provided thrust, while nuclear reactors powered basic electronic systems. The hull was armored with the best materials human industry could produce, but those materials were simple steel and ceramic compounds. Weapons consisted of kinetic projectiles accelerated by chemical explosives and electromagnetic railguns. Captain Minho studied intelligence reports about coalition technology as his ship approached the battle zone. Enemy vessels used energy weapons and defensive shields that could stop most forms of attack. Their hulls were made from exotic materials that could withstand tremendous amounts of damage. Their engines provided faster than light travel and tactical maneuverability far beyond human capabilities. But Captain Minho had spent 20 years fighting other human forces in conflicts around Earth's oceans and in space around the inner planets. Human enemies used identical technology and identical tactics. Victory usually went to whichever side could think more creatively about applying standard resources to unexpected situations. The tactic that Captain Minho developed became known as the Ghost Protocol. Sol's Fury would drift through space using minimal power while enemy sensors detected what appeared to be ordinary space debris. The ship's experimental stealth hull absorbed most electromagnetic signals, while carefully controlled heat emissions matched background radiation patterns. To coalition sensors, the human destroyer looked like scattered wreckage from earlier battles. When coalition vessels approached to investigate the debris, Sol's Fury would fire concentrated salvos of kinetic projectiles at point-blank range. The tungsten rods were accelerated to significant fractions of light speed using electromagnetic railguns powered by the ship's nuclear reactors. Simple physics did the rest. High-velocity, dense metal rods carried enormous kinetic energy that no known defense could completely stop. Coalition energy shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and explosive warheads. They had never encountered solid projectiles moving at such tremendous speeds. The tungsten rods punched through shield generators and hull plating like bullets through paper. Critical systems failed as kinetic energy was transferred directly into ship structures never designed to withstand such impacts. Captain Minho's first successful attack destroyed a coalition light cruiser within seconds. The alien vessel simply broke apart under impacts that overwhelmed its defensive systems completely. The second attack damaged a heavy destroyer badly enough to force its withdrawal from the battle zone. By the end of the first day, Sol's Fury had achieved 6 confirmed kills against targets that should have been completely invulnerable to human weapons. Major Su Yung led the first successful boarding action against a coalition vessel 3 days into the war. Her Marine unit had been transported to the battle zone aboard converted civilian cargo ships that appeared harmless to enemy sensors. When coalition forces moved to capture what they believed were refugee vessels carrying fleeing human civilians, they instead encountered assault troops equipped with weapons specifically designed for close-range combat. The boarding action succeeded because coalition forces had no experience defending against enemies who fought inside their own ships. Human Marines used chemical explosive charges that worked perfectly in vacuum environments. They carried electromagnetic pulse weapons that disrupted the bioneural interfaces most coalition species used to control their technology. Most effective of all were simple projectile weapons that fired dense metal bullets through whatever target they encountered. Coalition crew members were not prepared for enemies who moved and fought with such aggressive intensity. Most alien species resolved conflicts through negotiation or economic pressure. Physical violence was so rare that few coalition military personnel had ever experienced actual combat. They simply could not match the speed and brutality that human soldiers brought to close-range fighting. Major Su Young's Marines captured intact coalition technology that changed everything about the war. Human engineers had never seen energy, weapons, or defensive shield generators. Within hours, Dr. Yuna's technical teams were taking apart alien equipment and figuring out how it worked. What they discovered revolutionized human understanding of physics and engineering. The breakthrough came when engineer Wanshik successfully modified a coalition energy weapon to work with human power systems. The alien weapon required exotic energy sources that humans could not produce. But Wanshik discovered that human nuclear reactors could power the weapons if properly configured with makeshift interface equipment built from salvaged alien components. Within days, human ships were being retrofitted with captured coalition energy weapons. The modifications were crude and often unstable, but they worked well enough to give human forces firepower comparable to their enemies. More importantly, the weapons could be produced in quantity using human industrial capacity once engineers understood the basic principles involved. The psychological impact on coalition forces was devastating. Their technological superiority had been the foundation of their military confidence for 3,000 years. No primitive species had ever adapted alien technology so quickly or used it so effectively against its original creators. Intelligence reports from the battle zone described human tactical innovations that coalition military doctrine had no answers for. Admiral Thexinen found himself facing an enemy that improved its capabilities faster than his forces could adapt to new threats. Human units that had been equipped with primitive kinetic weapons one day would appear with advanced energy weapons the next day. Worse still, the humans seemed to understand how to combine alien technology with their own engineering in ways that created hybrid systems more effective than either technology alone. The Admiral's requests for reinforcements became increasingly urgent as human resistance continued to strengthen rather than collapse. His reports to Coalition High Command described enemy behavior that contradicted every assumption about primitive species' military capabilities. The humans were not just fighting back. They were learning from every encounter and applying those lessons immediately to improve their combat effectiveness. Commander Kira at the Deep Space Monitoring Station received orders to analyze human military development patterns. Her findings were deeply disturbing. The species she had classified as harmless primitives 6 months earlier had evolved militarily more in the past few weeks than most species managed in millennia. Their rate of technological adaptation was unprecedented in coalition history. Most shocking of all was the revelation that human military improvement was not accidental. Intelligence reports indicated that humans had been preparing for exactly this type of conflict for thousands of years. Every human weapon system had been tested against other human forces using identical technology. Every tactical innovation had been developed through actual combat experience against opponents who thought exactly like they did. 6 months into the war, Admiral Hyunwoo stood before the holographic display aboard humanity's new flagship Indomitable and studied the tactical situation with grim satisfaction. The vessel itself represented everything the human species had learned about combining alien technology with human engineering. Coalition energy weapons powered by human nuclear reactors. Defensive shields generated by captured alien equipment, but controlled by human tactical computers. Hull armor that combined the best materials from both civilizations. The statistics were staggering even by human military standards. The Coalition containment fleet had lost 40% of its original strength. 68 vessels destroyed, outright. 24 more damaged badly enough to withdraw from the battle zone. Human forces had captured intact alien technology from dozens of encounters and reverse-engineered everything they could understand. But the most significant change was not in technology but in human military organization. President Sun He had authorized the complete mobilization of human civilization for total war. Every factory on Earth and the colony worlds had been converted to military production. Every human adult had received basic military training. Children, as young as 12, were learning to operate captured alien equipment in case adult crew members were killed. Admiral Hyunwoo commanded a fleet that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. 200 human vessels equipped with hybrid technology that combined the best features of both civilizations. Crews trained in tactics developed specifically for fighting enemies with superior individual technology but inferior tactical flexibility. Most importantly, a command structure that could adapt to changing battlefield conditions faster than any military organization in Coalition experience. The breakthrough in human tactical development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuna's intelligence. Teams had successfully penetrated Coalition computer networks using captured alien equipment. The information they discovered changed human understanding of their enemies completely. The Coalition was not just technologically superior, they were also terrified. Linguist Yunbi worked 18-hour days translating captured Coalition communications. Her linguistic analysis revealed psychological patterns that human military planners had never expected to find. The aliens were not confident conquerors imposing their will on primitive resistance. They were frightened beings facing something completely outside their experience and understanding. Internal Coalition communications revealed the true scope of alien confusion about human capabilities. Military reports described human tactical innovations that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Psychological assessments concluded that humans fought with intensity and creativity that suggested severe mental instability. Cultural analysis teams recommended treating the entire human species as dangerously insane. Most valuable of all were the strategic planning documents that revealed Coalition military doctrine in complete detail. The aliens had not fought a real war in over 3,000 years. Their military forces were designed for intimidation and peacekeeping, rather than actual combat against determined resistance. Their weapons were powerful, but their tactics were rigid and predictable. Captain Soo-young had been promoted to admiral after her successful boarding actions and now commanded her own battle group of 20 vessels. Her ship specialized in what humans called wolfpack tactics, small groups of fast-moving vessels that coordinated their attacks to overwhelm larger enemy formations. The aliens had no effective counter for enemies that refused to fight according to established rules of engagement. The tactic that made Admiral Soo-young famous throughout human space was called the Soul Gambit. Her battle group would approach Coalition formations using standard attack patterns that enemy commanders recognized from their tactical manuals. The aliens would deploy their forces according to established defensive doctrine designed to counter traditional energy weapon attacks from predictable directions. At the critical moment, Soo-young's ships would phase shift using captured Coalition technology, but powered by human reactors that could sustain much higher energy outputs than alien systems. The human vessels would appear inside enemy defensive formations, and launch coordinated attacks using kinetic weapons and chemical explosives that coalition shields could not effectively stop. The psychological impact was as important as the tactical success. Coalition commanders who survived Soul Gambit attacks reported that human forces seemed to appear from nowhere and attack using weapons that should have been impossible to deploy from such positions. Enemy morale began to crack under the strain of fighting opponents who consistently violated every established principle of space combat. The turning point of the war came during the Battle of the Outer Perimeter, when Admiral Hyunwoo led the largest human fleet ever assembled against coalition forward operating bases. Intelligence reports indicated that the aliens were preparing for a final massive assault that would overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers. 300 coalition vessels were gathering at staging areas beyond human sensor range. Admiral Hyunwoo decided to attack the alien staging areas before they could launch their offensive. His battle plan combined every tactical innovation human forces had developed during 6 months of desperate fighting. Stealth approaches using captured alien sensors to avoid detection. Coordinated attacks by multiple battle groups striking simultaneously from different vectors. Most importantly, the deployment of humanity's newest and most terrifying weapon. Engineer Wanshik had successfully modified coalition planet killers to work with human targeting systems. The weapons were designed to crack planetary crusts and destroy entire worlds. But human engineers had discovered that the same technology could be focused into concentrated beams capable of slicing through multiple enemy vessels with single shots. The modified weapons became known as World Breakers, and they changed space combat forever. The Battle of the Outer Perimeter lasted 4 hours and ended with complete human victory. Coalition forces lost over half their assembled fleet, including the flagship that carried Admiral Thexanen himself. Human casualties were remarkably light considering the scale of the engagement. More importantly, the battle demonstrated that human forces could not only defend their territory, but could successfully attack and destroy coalition bases anywhere in the local region. The aftermath of the battle created panic throughout coalition space. Reports of human military capabilities spread through alien communication networks faster than official government censorship could contain them. Civilian populations on coalition worlds began demanding explanations for how primitive humans could defeat the most advanced military force in galactic history. Commander Kira filed her final report about human military development with growing sense of dread. The species she had originally classified as harmless primitives had evolved into the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. Their rate of technological adaptation showed no signs of slowing down. Worse still, intelligence indicated that humans were beginning to develop their own faster-than-light travel systems using captured coalition technology as a starting point. The implications were terrifying to contemplate. If humans achieved reliable interstellar travel capability, they would no longer be contained within their local solar system. They could expand throughout coalition space using their superior military tactics to conquer or intimidate any opposition they encountered. The entire galactic civilization that had maintained peace for 3 millennia could collapse within decades. Coalition High Command received reports from the battle zone with mounting alarm. The containment operation had failed completely. Human forces were now capable of offensive operations against coalition territory. Military analysts estimated that continued human technological development would give them clear superiority over coalition forces within 1 standard year. The debate in the Coalition Council was intense and desperate. Some representatives argued for immediate escalation using weapons of mass destruction against human population centers. If the humans could not be defeated conventionally, then they would have to be eliminated entirely before they became an existential threat to galactic civilization. Other voices counseled caution and attempted negotiation. The humans had demonstrated that they could fight, but they had not shown expansionist ambitions beyond their local territory. Perhaps diplomatic solutions could be found that would satisfy human demands for independence while maintaining coalition security interests. High Chancellor Vexlon faced the most difficult decision in coalition history: continue the war against an enemy that grew stronger with every engagement or attempt to negotiate peace with aliens who had already proven they could not be trusted to honor diplomatic agreements. Either choice could lead to the end of everything. The coalition had built over thousands of years. The decision was made for him when long-range sensors detected human vessels moving beyond their solar system for the first time. The signatures matched coalition faster than light drive technology, but modified in ways that suggested even better performance than the original alien systems. Intelligence reports confirmed the worst fears. Humans had achieved interstellar travel capability and were already beginning to explore nearby star systems. The neutral space station Harmony floated in the void between star systems as representatives from both civilizations prepared for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. The station itself was a marvel of coalition engineering that had served as a peaceful meeting ground for thousands of different species over the past millennium. Now it hosted negotiations that would determine whether the galaxy would know peace or endless war. Admiral Hyunwoo walked through the station's corridors, accompanied by diplomatic officer Nari and strategic advisor Jiho. The human delegation was small, but their presence commanded respect from every alien being they encountered. 6 months earlier, humans had been unknown primitives barely worthy of notice. Now they were the most feared military force in known space. The Admiral wore the dress uniform of the United Earth Space Force with decorations that told the story of humanity's impossible victory. The Medal of First Contact for surviving the initial alien attack. The Star of Defiance for refusing coalition surrender demands. The Cross of Innovation for successfully adapting alien technology to human use. Most prominently, the Galaxy's Edge ribbon that marked him as the first human commander to achieve victory in interstellar space. Diplomatic officer Nari carried the cultural analysis files that would guide human negotiating positions. Her team had spent months studying coalition psychology and social structures using captured intelligence. The aliens were not evil conquerors seeking galactic domination. They were frightened beings whose peaceful civilization had been shattered by contact with something completely outside their understanding. Strategic advisor Jiho reviewed tactical assessments that painted a clear picture of the current military situation. Human forces controlled 3 star systems beyond their original territory. Coalition military strength had been reduced by 60% through combat losses and voluntary withdrawals. Most importantly, human technological development was accelerating, as captured alien equipment was reverse-engineered and improved by human industry. The coalition delegation was far larger and more impressive in appearance. High Chancellor Vexilon led representatives from 20 major species accompanied by military advisors and cultural experts. Their goal was simple: find some way to end the war before human expansion destroyed everything the coalition had built over 3 millennia of peaceful development. The negotiation chamber was designed to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species. Atmospheric processors maintained separate breathing zones, while universal translators converted thoughts and speech patterns into forms that all participants could understand. Gravity fields could be adjusted to suit biological requirements, ranging from energy beings that preferred zero gravity to massive creatures that needed high-gravity environments. Admiral Hyunwoo took his place at the negotiating table and studied the alien representatives with professional interest. 6 months earlier, these beings had commanded technology and resources that dwarfed anything humanity possessed. They had approached human space with absolute confidence that their superiority would ensure quick victory. Now they sat across from him as defeated enemies seeking terms that would preserve some remnant of their former power. High Chancellor Vexilon began the proceedings with a question that revealed the depths of coalition confusion about human nature. His crystalline form pulsed with patterns that indicated deep curiosity, mixed with genuine fear as he spoke through the universal translator system. "We have studied your species for 6 months of conflict," he said in carefully measured tones. "We have analyzed your tactics and your technology. We have examined your cultural patterns and psychological profiles. But we still do not understand what kind of beings you are. In 3,000 years of expansion, we have cataloged over 10,000 intelligent species. None have ever adapted as you have. None have turned our own technology against us so effectively. None have fought with such creativity and determination. What are you? The question hung in the air as representatives from 47 species waited for an answer that would explain how their technologically superior civilization had been defeated by primitives who had barely achieved interstellar travel. The silence stretched for long minutes as Admiral Hyunwoo considered his response carefully. When he finally spoke, his words would be recorded in Coalition historical archives as the moment when the galaxy's balance of power shifted forever. The Admiral's voice was calm and measured, but every word carried the weight of absolute conviction born from months of impossible victory against overwhelming odds. We are what happens when a species spends 50,000 years learning to fight. Itself he began while maintaining direct eye contact with the alien representatives. Every weapon we used against you, we first used against each other. Every tactic, every strategy, every innovation we tested in wars against opponents who think exactly like we do. You brought superior technology to fight an inferior species, but we brought superior warfare to fight a superior technology. He gestured toward the holographic displays that showed the current military situation throughout Coalition space. Human forces occupied key strategic positions, while alien fleets retreated to defensive positions around their core worlds. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that the Coalition was now effectively contained within its own territory. Your mistake was assuming that technological advancement equals military capability. He continued. You developed energy, weapons and defensive shields that could stop any attack you had ever encountered. But you had never encountered kinetic weapons accelerated to relativistic speeds. You built faster-than-light engines that gave you tactical mobility we could not match. But you never learned to use that mobility for anything except retreating from superior tactics. The Admiral paused to let his words sink in before delivering the assessment that would haunt Coalition leadership for generations to come. Most importantly, you spent 3,000 years believing that peace was the natural state of intelligent life. We spent 50,000 years proving that war is the natural state of human existence. When you decided to fight us, you were not facing another peaceful species that could be intimidated into submission. You were fighting the survivors of the longest and most sophisticated military conflict in galactic history. High Chancellor Vexilon's crystalline body flickered through color patterns that indicated profound disturbance and growing comprehension. The implications of Admiral Hyunwoo's words were staggering to contemplate. The Coalition had not lost to superior alien technology or overwhelming numbers. They had been defeated by a species whose entire evolutionary development had been shaped by constant preparation for exactly this type of conflict. The peace treaty negotiations that followed lasted for 3 weeks, as both sides worked out arrangements that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The Coalition would recognize human territorial claims and technological independence. In exchange, humanity would accept the role of protector species responsible for defending Coalition space against external threats. The arrangement was unprecedented in Coalition history. For the first time in 3 millennia, they were acknowledging military inferiority to another species and requesting protection rather than offering it. But intelligence reports from long-range sensors indicated that the decision was necessary for survival. Unknown signals from distant galaxies suggested the existence of potentially hostile civilizations far more advanced than anything in local space. President Sun Hee received the treaty terms in the same underground situation room where she had first decided to resist Coalition demands 6 months earlier. The transformation was remarkable. Humanity had entered the conflict as a primitive species facing extinction. They were emerging as the galaxy's premier military power, with responsibilities for defending billions of alien beings who had once threatened to destroy them. Her response to the treaty would define humanity's role in galactic civilization for centuries to come. The Coalition wants us to be their protectors, she told her assembled advisors. They are offering us partnership in exchange for military security. They want to sleep safely knowing that the most dangerous species in known space is watching their borders instead of threatening their worlds. The final treaty ceremony took place aboard the space station Harmony, with representatives from every major species in Coalition space. Admiral Hyunwoo signed the documents that formally established humanity as the galaxy's protector species, while alien dignitaries watched with mixtures of relief and lingering fear. The signing was broadcast throughout human space where billions of people watched their species transform from unknown primitives to galactic guardians in less than one standard year. The impossible had become routine. The myths that had terrified the coalition were real, but they were only the beginning of humanity's impact on galactic civilization. In the weeks following the treaty signing, President Sun He received the first reports from human exploration vessels, pushing beyond coalition space into previously unknown regions of the galaxy. Long-range sensors were detecting energy signatures consistent with massive industrial civilizations. Radio telescopes were picking up transmission patterns that suggested coordinated activity across thousands of star systems.